Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. We're going to be talking with some mages today. I'm pretty excited. We got three big pumper mages. I'm just amazed and impressed and very thankful for their time. We got North the Mage, we got Ayle the Mage, and Esquire the Mage. Is that how it goes?
Is Ayle a mage? This is news to me.
I was told that Ayle was a genius mage.
He's good at any class that he plays, but like, do you self-identify? Like, are you playing a mage in TBC?
I am OG Vanilla and OG TBC. I played mage as well, so I do have that kind of angle to come at.
Okay, but are you maining a mage for TBC?
I'm not maining a mage for TBC, no.
Oh, okay. So he's not Ayle the mage. We've uncovered
he's Ayle,
his treason.
Ayle the Warcraft player. Got it. Okay.
Ayle the multi-class god, but
yeah,
clearly not.
It's gonna be my second main, if you will.
Hi, my name is Esquire, and I self-identify as a mage, and will be maining a mage in TBC.
That's what we want to hear. That's what we love to hear. That's that gold standard. He's a gold mage. Okay, Ayle's a silver mage.
Okay.
No, it's good to be here with you guys, though, for sure.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I'm excited because I want to talk today about Tier 4 and what we can expect to look forward to as... I'm coming at a couple perspectives here. So there's some things I want to talk about. I want to see, like, from a master looter's perspective, if I'm having to master loot my gear to people, and obviously it's all mages today, so everyone, all the information, and I guess Ayle's not. Ayle might be the voice of reason here, but... if I have a mage in my group, my Karazhan, my Magtheridons, my Gruul's Lair, and they're going to be, sending me DMs on Discord and be like, hey, I really need that item. That's my item because I'm a mage and mages need that for this. Obviously, everyone's going to be whispering me. Who's right? Which items do I actually need to be giving mages? And then what are they for, right? I want to ask a little bit about PvP, PvE. And then the other thing that I think people forget about when we talk about master looting, we talk about gearing, is things like gold farming. Like, what do mages want when they're out in the world just ripping gold and ruining the economy? Like, what gear are they looking for? So I want to look. That's what I want to kind of push into today. I want to talk about that. So how do you guys feel about Tier 4? Do you think it's good for mages? Are we in a bad spot? I'll throw it to North first. What do you think about mages in Tier 4 for just gearing wise?
I think that I have a different take than everyone else. So can you toss it back to me at the end, because I think I differ with everyone else here. I don't want to reveal which side I'm on.
Sure. All right, Esquire. What do you think? Do you think? And Esquire, when I thought about gold farming, I thought about Esquire, and I thought, okay, let's got to get him on here so we can have a perspective of someone that knows how to really rip with the gold farming. What's up?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, when we talk about like gearing for PvE for mages, though, when we talk about gold farming, the two kind of go hand in hand in the sense that you need a lot of gold to gear as a mage for PvE. In my opinion, like you've got your Spellfire, you got your Spell Strike. And outside of those pieces, I mean, there's really nothing that heavily competes with them. They're almost required for mages, but it also comes down to, will your mages be able to acquire those mats? Do they already have the resources farmed up in terms of gold to be able to buy those mats? So in my opinion, I don't really put too high of a value on T4 because you're going to be sacrificing those profession sets. It's too much of a sacrifice.
There is one consideration, though. And that's getting enough high stamina pieces if you're going to be tanking on Mulgar, right? So there is that one fight where you want to have over 10k HP. So there are some pieces, like, at least for me, when I was doing it previously back in TBC, I used a lot of my PvP set to do that because you get, oodles of stam from that. But the crafted pieces generally are, like, not as great for that.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I like off the top of my head, I can only really think of one piece of Tier 4 that a mage would even want to prioritize, and it would just be for the stat reason, because your set bonuses are already going to be taken care of from your Spell Strike and Spellfire, and that would be the shoulders. But I just don't see them being prioed to a mage over probably like a hunter and a warlock, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. So for people who don't know, warlocks and hunters share a tier token with mages. And whenever anyone talks about Burning Crusade DPS, everybody just seems to talk about warlocks and hunters. Like, that's all everyone says. Like, oh, warlocks, hunters, that's the new DPS meta. So when I saw that mages share a tier token with them, I was like, oh man, how do these mages get their tier set like on the first run? Do they even want it? So it sounds like you don't. You want just your Spell Strike, your Spellfire set, which, by the way, just to throw in my own personal contribution here, I leveled a mage back in Burning Crusade originally. I was a mage originally. My first main character I ever leveled to max level And I tried to farm the Spellfire and Spellstrike set by myself. Like I never used the auction house. I tried to use every tailoring cooldown I had on it, and I ended up quitting the mage game just because I didn't understand it. So that's just my personal thing. Was just like I was a complete scrub mage, trying to get those gears, and I had to do it as a frost mage, creating gear that gave me fire damage, and it wasn't fun.
I'm curious what North has to say if he's throwing tailoring in the garbage bin.
Tier is based. You're all fucking wrong. Okay,
Oh.
Tier is fucking awesome. Okay, and you want to know why? It's good for those other uses, right? So we were saying for like gold farming and stuff, the raw stats on it are really really good, right? Like it's something that I think that Esquire would actually really like, you know, because you got like Caller of the Outdoor, right? You got 35 intellect, right? You got a meta socket and another socket, right? You know, Pauldron in the Outdoor, 26 intellect, 2 sockets. Really, really, really dope stuff for like AoE farming and just like out in the world. Generally good pieces early on. But the thing that they are good for, and the reason why they are good, is because Spell Strike is garbage unless you're fire. And if you're fire, you have 3 IQ points.
So you're going to be going Frost tier 4.
No, I'll be going Arcane.
Okay. Well, I mean, that raises a whole lot of questions as well with the type of support that you have in your raid to kind of be able to sustain as Arcane, right?
Part of what makes it really, really solid, especially early on, is just how much int that you get. Like as you actually progress through the tiers, something like I think you like peak out an int in tier 5, but it's very, very, very similar to tier 4. So the amount of stats that you actually have that are very, very important to Arcane are still strong early. Obviously, tier 5 has a whole slew of bonuses on it that make Arcane just god tier for a very long time. But prior to that, the stats are still there. The stats are still good, right? 20% less damage on Arcane Blast is, you know, it hurts. Okay, it hurts a lot, but it doesn't make it. Arcane is more than 20% better than Fire if the fights are short, which they will be.
Yeah, we're seeing.
So you're an int shell.
Go ahead, Ayle.
So you're saying you're a stats int shell all the way because you're just going to play Arcane the whole way through.
Yeah, and so in the alternatives available, like when you look at Spell Strike obviously is a very, very good set for Fire because of how much hit it has on it and how much hit you need as Fire. You need most hit as Fire compared to either Frost or Arcane, right? Arcane obviously you need very, very little hit because of how the hit talent works. And people are like, oh, but you need the Frost hit for when Frostbolt. No, you don't need Frost hit. You're ridiculous. Okay, so like Trial Fire Trousers in the itemization that we have, they have 42 stamina, okay, which is fantastic for stamina. But 40 intellect, 3 sockets, 49 damage and healing. Socket bonus 5 spell damage. Insane. Caller of the Outdoor, 35 intellect, 41 damage, 27 crit. Meta socket. It's insane. They're so good. Right? There's such a good piece. Caller of the Outdoor.
Yeah, from everything I'm seeing online, and I think everything I'm seeing online is basically North propaganda, is that Arcane is going to be the meta, that everyone that is going to be trying to be Arcane mages. And that's just for me, probably being a fan of Countdown to Classic and listening to that far too much. So what do you think, Esquire? Do you think we're seeing fire mages? What do you think the meta is going to be going forward? And do they? And you're obviously on the side that tier gear is not that important to be prioritized to mages. What do you think?
It still shouldn't be prioritized to mages. To be clear, right? Pauldron of the Outdoor, not that good for like mage, right? Like shoulders. Hunters don't need it, but warlocks do want the 2-step. They want the chest and they want the shoulders really badly. They don't want the helmet because they do want spell strike, right? So the helmet definitely should go mage, but the shoulders should go warlock 100%. You get those last grade unless you have a bad war. To be clear.
Yeah, well, I mean, see, I don't know. I think that Arcane definitely has the potential, but for starting out, I'm definitely going to be going the fire route. I don't see there being any chance, at least in my guild, and I would assume other guilds, that you're going to have any prio over a hunter, especially to stack up to 4-piece. Yeah, that's the only thing that bothers me about it. But obviously, like, and when you get into tier 5 content, you're heavy prio on a 2-piece for your tier set there, and once you get that 2-piece, your Arcane just scales. Or should scale like incredibly.
Plus, you have trinkets like Serpent Coil Braid is so insane for Arcane, and it's only available obviously in Serpent Shrine Cavern, and it enables you to essentially pop 2 trinkets at the same time, which is just completely bonkers, right? Like so you get a lot of stuff in tier 5. Tier 5 definitely makes it, you know, like worth its weight in gold, but it still works, right? People have always said this. right? People have always been of this opinion, right? Like on especially on private servers, right? They always push back when arcane is viable, right? They've
Mhm.
always said, oh, like it's not viable until X point, right? And then that X point has always gone back a little like slower, like very slowly but surely. The line in which arcane is viable has gone back slowly until it was, essentially just after you get good tier 4 gear. Like that's where we are in private servers. After you get good tier 4 gear, even going into tier 5, it's really solid. If no for no other reason than for threat issues, right? When you're trying to walk into tier 5 with tier.
I think it's
So-
incredibly possible that if Arcane does have like any viability in T4, like you're saying it does, or even remotely touches fire, that you're going to have a ton of mages playing Arcane.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. I mean, just initially, just my brain was like, oh man, if you can be arcane in tier 4 and then just easily transition to tier 5, everyone was going to be arcane all the way through it. And then obviously we, not talking about tier 6, that you'd be again. I've heard North talk about this, that you'd basically the gearing doesn't gear well for arcane. You have tons of haste and it's not good. But
you get like very little from tier 6. But I think the important thing to note for a lot of guilds is that like when you have multiple mages, it's like fire becomes better and better, because one of the biggest issues with fire is scorch, and the fact that you have to like stack it up. People talk about this with arcane too, right? You obviously have to arcane blast a few times until you have the very fast arcane blast. It's honestly worse for fire because you have to scorch 5 times, and scorch is just a terrible ability, and then you have to re-scorch right every 30 seconds. If you have 2 mages, it's a lot less awful. And if your warlock's planning on going fire, especially early on, fire can be really solid. I might go fire like for a couple of weeks, just because my warlocks might want to go fire for a couple of weeks. But after they get their gear, like especially like tier 4, like pre-bis with a couple of tier 4 bis pieces, they're gonna want to go back to destruction. As far
North,
as I'm
how do you gem in tier 4 as arcane? It's something I don't have any experience with at all.
So I mean, it really depends. I don't want to talk about potentially things that are bugs that if fixed would make arcane worse. But in the current mana meta, you literally ignore intellect. You just gear like you gear like you don't ignore intellect, but like if I had to choose between spell damage and intellect, I'd always go for spell damage.
Innervate's been fixed, right?
Oh wait, wait, when was it fixed? No,
Yesterday. It was.
Damn
it's
it!
done, man. It's
okay.
over.
No, okay. So I mean, given that innervate's been fixed, okay, that makes sense. That was horrifically bugged. Given that it's fixed, probably more like a split focus, right? So if you can get the gems that are the 6 damage 4-inch gems, you essentially just throw those into everything. But those obviously only drop from the end boss of I believe Steam Vaults, and they might be unique, yada yada. So a mix of spell damage and intellect, mostly.
I'm really curious to see how it parses out, because obviously we don't have the gear to necessarily support either spec to the best degree just yet from the beta. So that and we have a lot of room in tier 4, a lot of time in tier 4 to actually theorycraft that out. So that should be interesting, North.
I think that for like it's just because of the length of the fights, right? Like Mag is not Mag is even though it's like nerfed from like first day, right? When it was really long, Mag is still long enough that it's kind of rough for Mage. It might be less rough if you actually are stacking all 5. If you can get to a place where you're stacking all 5 of those ads and you can start Arcane Explosion, and you have so little threat that you can spam AoE. If that's not the case, though, which it probably won't be for quite a while, I imagine that if you're looking at purely 25 mans, that fire will outpace Arcane, purely because the fights are bad for Arcane, right? Gruul, short attack range, not good for Arcane.
Right.
Right, because you might end up throwing all the way across the room. You get downtime on your spells, which you get the 41-yard range coming out from fire. So it might be logistical issues that push Arcane high.
And same with support. Like, I'm sure you're going to be playing Arcane. You're going to have, kind of the North support network with Innervates and Shadow Priest.
Of course, and that goes without
Shaman,
saying,
right?
right? You need the comp. The comp needs to
Yeah.
support it. There needs to be a single mage in your entire raid, and that single mage needs to be fed all of the resources.
At the cost of them being fed to, say a warlock, or it certainly is something that I think your guild would strongly consider when you told them that.
Yeah, I mean for sure, but the warlocks gain very little, right? Like life tap is a very good spell, and like they don't have a lot of spirit as it stands anyway. So right, like giving an innervate to a lock, for instance, is going to let them do, gonna let them not life tap, maybe like 5 or 6 times, which is like 3 shadow bolts. Whereas an arcane mage like spamming arcane blast every 1.5 seconds, right? Like that, because of how mana regen interacts with the class's stacking intellect. It just makes it like you're getting so much more mana back on the mage, and you need that mana to do damage, whereas the warlock can just hit the tap button, just chilling.
Absolutely. I mean, these are arguments that have to be made by mages if they want to try to, make those big pump numbers on the tracks. Because as it stands, without that support, you're definitely gonna always most likely be behind the hunters and the warlocks.
For sure.
Yeah, and that's going to be the interesting thing with the tuning of Mag, because as you said, that was a long fight. Maybe, potentially that fight is like so tightly tuned that are you going to be able to get the innervate? Are you going to be able to have the sustain to last in a fight that long?
Well, you always like an arcane mage playing cleverly will always, like, no matter how, like, because arcane was even good in like tier 4. It wasn't great on Mag. It was fine on Gruul. It was like good on Gruul, but it's not great on Mag no matter how you squeeze it. But you still won't run out of mana if you're playing clever, right? You just have to weave in like proper use of Frostbolt, which will obviously decrease your damage a lot. But if you're spamming Frostbolt and alternating between 3 Frostbolts and 3 Arcane Blasts as an arcane mage, you will never run out of mana. Ever.
Yeah, you got that sustain, with the frostbolt
you will
weaving.
literally never run out. So you can keep doing, which is an advantage over fire, because fire can't do that, right? The sustained damage of arcane, the mana, like 0 mana cost arcane, is much higher than the 0 mana cost of fire. So fire actually does need fairly similar resources to arcane in those longer fights, because it does lack, like it does have high costs, right? Especially if you're going the Icy Veins build, which you should.
Okay, so the are there any trinkets we should be looking forward to as a mage? Is there any trinket that you're going to be like, we got the lightning capacitor? I know a lot of people want that. Is it, has anyone gotten it in the beta, and do we have any testing done on it? And is there any, do mages want it? And then is there any other trinkets we should be looking at, or offset pieces that mages should be vying for and saying, hey, I need this piece, I need this more than warlock. I'm an arcane mage. You're already feeding me all the innervates. Now I need this piece of gear. Because if I get intellects, I do more damage. So more, give me the gear first. So that, hey, why ruin your raid, right? You've already convinced the raid to give you every innervate. So now you have to convince them to give you all the pieces to make the innervates worth it. Look, see,
you gotta convince them to give you PI too. Yeah. That's crucial, right? Like you're gonna want, if you're running one healing priest in a raid, that one healing priest is gonna go into Divine Spirit, because it's a really buff for the raid. If they're going to Divine Spirit, they're so close to getting PI. You just gotta grease the palms of the raid leader, all right? And then get the PI in your hands, even though it's probably better on the warlock.
Okay, so any trinkets, North? Are there any trinkets I should be looking at as a mage?
Pen of the Violent Eye is a very interesting one. Pen of the Violent Eye is like an arcane specific trinket, so it drops off of Shade of Iran, and it's actually it's pretty bad early on, like if you're doing progressive itemization. But in this version, it has a raw plus 40 intellect, which is really, really good. Like it's a lot of fucking intellect. Like it's a lot of raw stats to just have on. Also, what it has is it gives you mana per 5 every spell that you cast. And when you, like, if you had, for instance, a PI and or it's like Lust and you have Icy Veins going and you're hitting like 1 second Arcane Blasts, right? You're nuts, right? Like you're crazy. Every single cast you get an additional 21 mana per 5, and that stacks up. So if you're just spamming buttons, you actually do get a lot of mana back from it. So if you're more mana conservative, right, maybe you don't have as many innervates as you'd like, or maybe you're in a fight where you know that a healer needs an innervate, as just as an example, right? Like the pendant is really, really good for that, and it's really good for trash as well, because it's just more.
Yeah, I think from also like a less sustained standpoint and more of an output standpoint, mages or maybe casters just in general are kind of fortunate, because we've got some fairly accessible, fairly good trinkets, especially if you're not coming out of classic vanilla with Essence of Saffron. So you've got your Scryer's Rep trinket, which is easily obtainable and 100% going to be pre-bis.
And great for fire. Fantastic for fire.
Yeah,
what a great
100%.
For fire.
And then you've also got the icon, which is your badge trinket as well, which will be easily farmable, and you don't really have to contest anyone on that. But as far as like your bis coming out of at least phase 1 tier 4 content, I mean, where do you guys weigh Magtheridon's eye?
Ayle, you wanna You want to weigh in?
As for like the resist, like as a fire mage, you're generally going to have, you know, enough hit, right? Especially playing with an alley shaman and things like that. So I don't really think the proc on that is overly great, unless, you know, North, you can enlighten me, at least for rating, that is, right?
It's not bad for things that like trash, ironically, right? Because if you're stacking up scorches, the scorch debuff, if it resists, that procs it, right? So and there's an extra chance of that, and there's an extra chance of that happening, because like, right, you cast a scorch, the scorch can resist, and then the scorch debuff can resist, right? So you have one on top of the other, so you have it's double the chance to proc off of the scorch. So it's decent, but it's a pretty bad trinket, right? It's not a great trinket. It's much better for warlocks because their main spell that they spam has improved Shadow Bolt attached to it, which can also resist. So they have the double chance on their spam ability as well, which just makes just better.
Yeah, and that
And
was kind of
warlocks
my
generally have less hit too.
right. Yeah, I mean that was kind of
Well,
my
they
thinking of
should
it,
be
right?
they should be hit capped, right? Everyone, like, they should definitely be hit capped. If you're getting a Magtheridon piece, right, you definitely should be hit capped. Right? Am I crazy?
No, I think you should be. I think you are right there. But my point being, you know, there are a lot of pieces that warlocks are just going to absolutely 100% without question have the priority on. So as mages, you kind of have to think about what other options. And you made a good point there, North, about some of these other trinkets that even if you're not arcane, you know, maybe go for sustain. Maybe you're able to find some value there when you're not going to have, you know, the argument to say, well, hey, listen, this warlock here, you know, great warlock, whatever, but let me get back there and then trinket.
Yeah, there are definitely not that many trinkets that are like, right, super even contested in this tier though, because as you said, right, like you get really good trinkets just, right, like Scryer's Blood Gem, especially if you're fire, plus Icon is really going to be the go-to. I don't think there's a good argument if we want to talk about Lightning Capacitor. There's not a good argument for Lightning Capacitor that's much better on an Elemental Shaman, in my mind, just because, right, like you, especially if you're a fire mage, you're casting so infrequently, right? Like you have a long cast time on your nuke, whereas a shaman has a 1.5 second cast time on their nuke. So it's, even though electrical charges can be generated more often than every 5 seconds, you just have more chances of crits to charge up Lightning Capacitor, and it scales with your nature stuff. So not that good. A sleeper trinket that I haven't tested actually because the honor system wasn't implemented. I don't know if it has been implemented on beta. I've been too busy doing IRL stuff and prepping for TBC to actually go test this. But Mark of Defiance, I'm not sure what the Horde version is called, but Mark of Defiance is a really potentially very good trinket. It has a damage and healing of 32, just like Equip, which is solid. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but has a chance on hit to restore 128 to 173. There's no cooldown on that chance, as far as I'm aware, and it's a fairly high chance. I'm not sure what the chance is, though. I haven't actually done any tests with it, but on private servers, this was really, really...
Yeah, I currently don't know anyone that has gotten it. I'm sure maybe somebody has, but that's also a trinket, or rather, yeah, a trinket that that comes up with AoE farming. A lot of people questioned it for the slay pins AoE grind all the way up, but it's just not realistic to get, obviously, because of the currency requirement.
Yes.
And as well, the trinket from Arcanite Crypts as well is a good one, although that's
What
a
is that?
2-minute cooldown. On kill restores 900 mana,
Huh.
but it's a cooldown and it's 2-minute cooldown to use it. Prop pallies love it, and I've seen a bunch of them in the beta running to get that just for like sustain. But yeah, for farming, that's kind of what I want to get is both these trinkets.
Yeah, it'd be definitely great to just run them both, like at a certain point, right? Like,
You know,
pretty sick.
and then like also like there's, how do you feel about Quag's Eye?
I want to hear how you guys feel about Quag's Eye, because there's a lot of people talk a lot of things about Quag's Eye. Personally, I think it's fucking terrible. I think it's an awful item. I think it's really, really, really bad. It's better than it was on private servers because you have less batching than you do on private servers. So you get the spell haste immediately. But the problem is that we have, as like, assuming, right, because if you're on Quags, you're probably going to be a fire mage or a frost mage. And by the time you hit a spell, right, with a like a fireball, for instance, you throw out the fireball and then you start casting a new fireball. That procs, and then it doesn't apply to the new fireball. So theoretically, depending on how close, if you're really close to the boss and it procs, you'd have to stop your cast and then recast in their fireball to get the full effect of quags, which is super awkward. Okay, or you just don't get the benefit of like half of the quags because you're casting a slow fireball for 3 seconds and it's only a 6-second.
I don't think it's that bad of a trinket, but I think it does implicate the sustain as well when you're pumping the spell haste. So that's the kind of the big drawback for me.
I just find that you get so little out of it, right? Because if it procs at a bad time, it's actually kaput, right? It actually does so very little because you've wasted half of the proc, which is a good proc, but you've wasted half of it doing nothing, right? Which sucks. Because if you're at like an average distance from the boss, probably takes your fireball like 2 seconds to get to the boss. So maybe like a second and a half, maybe a second, right? But like if you cast that, then you're losing like 1.5 to 2 to 2.5 seconds of the proc if it procs on that fireball.
I think we also have the consideration, right, that we've got some, as mages, we've got some pretty powerful trinkets coming out of vanilla itself. I kind of mentioned it with the essence off Saffron. And you've also got the Mark of the Champion for, you know, any undead fights. And then you've also got Neltharion's Tear to supplement any hits. So I think trinkets, yeah, all in all, it's something that we have kind of fairly good access to. And if you don't have access to it in TBC easily, you certainly had a good chance in vanilla if you were raiding.
I think a sleeper trinket that people maybe don't mention enough, especially as it relates to trash. It's not as relevant in tier 4 maybe, but in tier 5, I think this will be huge. Is the Eye of Diminution, because just like having obviously you have threat reduction. It's less at 60, I believe it's 35% or 25%. It's something like that. It's less. It's like 10% less. It's 35% in vanilla. It's 25% in TBC because it reduces per level. But a 25% threat reduction is often all you need compared to like a fetish, whereas like a fetish has a longer cooldown, but it'll have a 50% threat reduction in TBC. They're for the same amount of time, and you get a little more crit on the Eye of Diminution. But for fights where you have like ads spawn, for instance, like Hydros when it's phasing, that means you can just instantly go on those ads, and you have like a 2-minute cooldown on it, so if it ends up being a longer fight, you do get the benefit from that. Or like Leotheris the Blind, where right maybe you want to pump into him during Whirlwinds when he resets threat, and you just want to like pop that going outside of it, or even on like progression if your tank is like, you know, using a lot of defensive gear, just having that trinket available could be really, really beneficial fight.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that happened in the arsenal, and something that you know most mages raiding in X right now probably have acquired the eye. You know, fetish obviously kind of misses the mark in terms of what we're looking for there, but yeah, I think eye hits it.
Yeah, especially because it has like a lower cooldown, right? And like people might be like, oh, it's, you know, it's double the threat reduction on fetish. Wouldn't that be more beneficial? But oftentimes you don't need that much in terms of a threat reduction, right? It's like you're barely pulling aggro. You're not pulling aggro by like half, right? Like you're pulling aggro by a fairly small margin. So it can be very beneficial, even 25.
Are there any weapons now? So the trinkets, I feel like we've gone through quite a list of them. But are there any the weapons now? We're fighting warlocks? You're going to be fighting shadow priests. You're going to be fighting all these other casters. What do you guys think mages should be looking for? Is there a specific item that mages want? I'll just start over with Esquire. What do you think? Is there a specific weapon that you're shooting for?
So I don't know about Ayle, but for myself, I know North doesn't have ATS, but Ayle, I'm not sure. So my standpoint is going to be a lot different from a mage that does not have ATS. So let me reserve my thoughts for after North, and Ayle can kind of chime in there.
Okay, Ayle, is there a weapon you think mages should be shooting for?
Well, so I'm going in with the KT staff. We haven't had many Wraith Blades and things. Like, obviously, people generally want to pick up that just for the raw spell power. So I'm going to be grinding out the Throma rep on my character to get that one-hander. And then most mages, I think, are going to be going after, I mean, maybe not North, who probably is going to blast us with some intellect shock and awe here, but most are going to be going after the dagger off Melchizar, which is, you know, pretty highly contested between, I mean, all casters, right?
The problem with going after the Mind Blade off of Malchazar is that for mages and warlocks, you do have access to, if you don't have an Atiash, like throw everything out the window if you have an Atiash. But for mages and warlocks, right, they can use both the Gruul weapon off of Gruul, the Blood Maul Magus Blade, which is very slightly worse than the Nathrasian Mind Blade. But elemental shamans, shadow priests, and boomkins do not have access to good weapons that aren't from Mr. what's it called, Mr. Prince
Mr. Gruul?
Malchazar. Yeah, Mr. Malchazar. So given that that's the case, right, and given that the case that I believe the Stormcaller and the Alliance equivalent, whatever it is from Thrall Rep, is also a sword, right? You have so few options for one-handed weapons that are actually, solid for you, that aren't from world bosses. So Nathrezim ends up wanting to be prioritized by guilds to those like off classes. And so you do like you kind of like are prioritized to the Blood Bowl Magus Blade. My take though is this, right? Because every warlock should either have or be going for an Atiesh. And mages don't actually get the same benefit off of the Atiesh. The best weapon in the tier, if you can get it, should be the mage, which is the Talon of the Tempest, which is the thing off of Doomwalker. It's a world boss weapon. They're making it bind on pickup for the first few patches, so it's not going to be a BOE item, so you have to actually kill Doomwalker. It has 2 yellow sockets in it, which is good. Like, it's especially good for Arcane, but it's still really, really, really good for Fire. It has spell hit rating on the actual weapon, which is insane. It's a very, like, you don't have weapons that typically have spell hit on them, so especially like as Fire, that's a really beneficial thing. And even Arcane can be kind of hard in the initial patch to get a lot of hits. So Town of the Tempest is what people really like. That's the thing in the star, right?
How realistic do you think it is, on at least a highly populated server to be able to snag that?
Very unrealistic, because everyone is going to want it. It's a dagger as well, right? So everyone can use it. So convincing your raid, right? Like if your raid is not full of warlocks that have Atieshes, right? Then it's going to go to a warlock, right? If a warlock's not going to get an Atiesh, they should take the Talon over a mage, right? Other classes, the Shadow Priest, the Boomkin, the Elemental Shaman, are all going to want it. So if they for some reason are like officers or clouded and for reasons, right, like that aren't based on merit, they will also get it, right? And so then it's left to the mage to try and sneak in, make sure every warlock has an Atiesh and is forced to to be that sort of like sidecar motorcycle bitch mode role to buff everyone else, and then gobble up the town. Definitely hard though. Definitely very challenging.
I was just thinking about this, and it just occurred to me while you're talking that. So, at the time when we have world bosses with BOP gear, we're probably going to have the most layering we've ever had in Burning Crusade, right? Like, they'll still be layered. Are we going to be seeing people jumping layers for different bosses, for world bosses, to get gear? Are we going to be having people like, I'm thinking jet farming and Ubers and like just people... They're going to be, all right, let's world boss farming. Like, which layer are you on? Everyone keeps switching layers. Try to find the layer with the boss on it. All right, I got the boss on my layer. Everyone invite this one. I pulled him. Okay, now invite everybody. Like, oh my God. Like,
well, I don't know if it's going to be the same as it was in Classic, but when it was layered in Classic, they actually doubled the time of world boss spawns based on the number of layers, or like by that factor. So there will... assuming it's the same, it won't be just like twice as many kind of thing.
Oh, gotcha.
They tried to limit it, so
wait, did they do that?
they did.
Are we?
I believe the Onslaught man. They had a country. I never saw a world boss, so
I guess our place was like fairly unlayered very quickly, and so we didn't really deal with layers for that long. So yeah, I guess I really wouldn't know. I didn't really follow the Fairlina scene.
So I kind of have a different take as to what it was. Obviously Holly Longdale, who's the current lead of Classic, when she was the lead of EverQuest, when they did their progression servers and everything like that, when they dealt with open world spawns like that, what they would do is they had something similar to layering, but they would only have it be able to spawn in the main layer, like in a single layer. So I'm not sure what kind of negatives that could create. I could definitely think of a few, but I think I would prefer that as opposed to there just being, even more than one spawn per window. That's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, it's gonna be really weird on launch too, because like if you, for instance, have you're gonna have guilds obviously rushing to hit 70 instantly, and if say on Fairlina, say there are 25 layers, right, which I think is a fairly conservative estimate. On the first day, right? If those people hit, which they will, 70 the first day, right? If there are 25 Doomwalker kill,
yeah,
that's gonna be a fucking problem. That's gonna be bad. Especially if they were BOE, right? Like the people were thinking about this, right? They're thinking, hey, we can get 25 Talons on the first day to sell them. God forbid that happens. Hopefully what they do is that they make the spawn, like the spawn window open when TBC is released. But I don't know if they would do that. Like I think that might be too involved for them.
Yeah, I think a lot of us probably still remember how much layering can affect, not just spawns like that, but also the economies, which is a whole nother topic. But I'll chime in for the ATS part. So obviously ATS for mages, it's insane. It's insanely good, especially for the vanilla era in phase 6. It carries over incredibly well all the way through around tier 5. And like a lot of people are like, what? But how is that possible? And it's 100% because of the aura. And when you factor in the aura being granted to your group members and the fact that auras can stack, it's just hands down the best raw power, but also utility in terms of what you provide to your group members.
I'm curious, what group comp are you going to be theoretically running like in tier 4?
Yeah, so
are you aware?
I honestly have no idea what Multis is planning on doing there.
Okay, so based on like if he goes with the framework that I gave him and he like alters it like for like certain meta, because like I was talking with him about it for pretty extensively when I was still in raid. If he goes with the framework that I gave him and like adjusts for meta slightly, even if you adjust for meta, it doesn't really change the caster group at the end. Essentially what you're left with usually is 1 warlock, 1 shadow priest, 1 elemental shaman, maybe, right? Maybe, depends. And 1 resto shaman. So for the elemental shaman and the warlock, obviously they're very, very good. But for the resto shaman and for the shadow priest, that crit is near useless. So I would push up against the fact that you were claiming that it's if you're in a group full of like warlocks and like a boomkin and you got an Ayle shaman, like if you're essentially like in a warlock group, ATS is amazing, right? Like it's really good. It's the best thing you could be wearing. It's your for sure. But if not, Talon of the Tempest and an offhand, Magtheridon and an offhand, Blood Magus and an offhand is going to vastly outpace ATS, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, totally. I think there is probably a breakpoint, depending on how many people are at least absorbing that benefit and actually making good use of that benefit from the ATS aura. But yeah, I that's kind of the thing when you talk about Bistless, and one of the things that got misconstrued a lot in actual classic from the Bistless that were coming out is when you look at these, Bistless that get, kind of put out on these guides and whatnot, they're not really talking about the percentages. They're not really breaking down the actual theory crafting of it. And so when you look at something and you hear, oh, ATS is BIS until phase 5, yeah, that might be the case, but there's also caveats to that. And that's a good point, North.
Is there any sleeper items that we haven't talked about that you guys are looking forward to getting before everyone, that you have on your reserve that you said, no, I need this first?
Not until like that's is a discussion. Are we going to talk about tier 5 or no?
I wasn't planning on it just because I wanted to keep it short and sweet. And then
fair enough.
We can always reconvene at a later
tier 5
date.
Tier 5 is like where mages really like, that's where they get their like if they get goodies, it's in tier 5. Every single piece. I've gone through this like a billion times with my guild just to like rub it in the faces of the dirty other casters. But if all things go as planned, I think there is not a single item on my BIS list, and most of these items come from like tier 5. Like almost all of them actually come from tier 5. There's one item on my entire list that I do not get immediately prioritized. Everything else, if it drops, is mine instantly. And it should be every mage's item if it drops, and they should instantly get it, and there should be no exceptions.
What is that?
Huh?
What item is that?
What's the exception?
What's the item? You said there was an item that this item that drops?
No, literally every item that is good for mage in tier 5, other than Court of Screaming Terrors, which drops from Lurker, I believe. That's just like my hit set that I'm wearing. But like every single other than there's a wand. So there's a wand off Solarian, and there's Court of Screaming Terrors. Those are the 2 items that you don't get first. Every other item, every piece of tier that you could possibly want. Every item off of KT, the weapon off KT, the cloak off KT, the neck off KT, the everything off KT, right? The gloves off KT. You all get them first. Everything should just go to them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, mages out there, obviously a lot of the drama, a lot of the issues that arise in a majority of guilds come from loot. Take the back seat and tier 4 content, just take the back seat, ride whatever gear you have coming out of Classic, take the upgrades that you can get your profession gear if you're going to be wearing it. But yeah, don't make any arguments. Don't set yourself back going into T5.
Don't yell over a mag wand or like a mag trinket or like tier 4 shoulders, right? Just sit back, right? You're sitting there, you're revving your engine, because in tier 6 you're gonna get nothing. In tier 4 you get very little, but in tier 5 you get everything.
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
Illidan look like skull staff. That's not going to you in
It's like
tier
nope,
6. Yeah.
nope, 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 nope. But all of the tier 5 and all the shiny pieces from tier 5 that last you well into tier 6, if not all the way through tier 6, right? Those pieces will definitely go to you if your guild has an iota of of brain power.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm. Sounds like tier 4 is not the discussion for mages, but it does sound like there is some stuff in the air. Obviously, we have arcane and fire, and I guess frost is just completely just PvP spec according to all the mages. Is there any gear that you want for a PvP? If I'm going to be a PvP mage, I don't know, Ayle, do you have any interest in this? Is there an item in any tier items that you want other than just getting honor gear? Ayle, you there? Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I guess Ayle's having some issues.
Ayl's mic just lit up like for like a half second there, so he's there, but I think he's having some mic difficulties.
Okay. Well, North or Westward, I don't know if you guys North. I assume you're going to be PvPing. Do you have any gear you're looking for from PvE that in tier 4 that you're going to look for the first phase of Burning Crusade?
I mean, anything early on is really really solid. But I think the biggest thing, to be honest with what I plan on doing,
Another
is
meta breaker right here.
Yeah.
is the spellfire gear early on.
Okay, listen,
Because
dude. Okay,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
hold up.
yeah,
no.
yeah. No, people. No. Okay. Listen up here, buddy. When people don't have resilience, all right, double mage, double palm pyro mage is insane. Okay, I'm gonna get glad cut off week 1. All right, with my double mage setup or my mage rogue setup being palm pyro, and then I am never gonna PvP for all of season 1.
Yeah, it's actually stupid right now how insanely powerful double DPS is. Like the lack of resilience, the fights are over just almost immediately.
Yeah, it's been crazy to me. I was watching some warlocks going there. I was watching Cargos actually. He was going UA, and I was he was saying, "Oh, you don't go. You go UA because you want to go SLSO because the resilience is low." And I was like, "But like resilience is low, so just go burst, just kill things. Like if you don't need to live. Like if you can, I mean, go SLSL warlock if you need it for the anyway." Getting off topic, getting excited about PvP. I'm excited. Burning Crusade's the only time, I watch arenas nowadays in retail, and I'm like, dude, I don't know what monks do. I don't know what that class does. But Burning
So
Crusade,
I was playing like retail arena for I was playing for like a month and a half, maybe 2 months on Shadowlands launch, and I still can't tell you what monks do. I have no clue what monks do. Too. I have no clue what half the classes
A lot
do.
of damage is what they did.
Yeah, no, they just roll around and just like one shot you, right? Like that's pretty much it. But I couldn't tell you what half the abilities do, man. Like I really like it's just so I feel so boomed out when I like play retail arena because I just don't want to like go through the process of relearning every ability because there's just like 1,000 defensive cooldowns that everyone
Yeah.
has, and I just feel so old.
and
Well,
not,
yeah, I
not
mean,
only
it's,
that, you've got the PvP talents. So you, like even if you started a character and started playing it and like leveled every class up to full, if you don't play with the PvP talents, you don't get to know what they do, and you don't understand how it interacts. And so, those are completely different. They completely change. I mean, Lightning Lasso is a shaman ability. All of a sudden, you can just stun someone for 6 seconds. Like,
Lightning Lasso is so cool. What a cool ability. That's a really stupid ability.
it's so stupid.
I was playing with an Ayle shaman, and you just like Lightning Lasso and then like toss a meteor down on them, dude. It's sick.
Yeah,
It's really fun.
it's crazy. Like, there's just so many little things that you're like, oh, okay. And so, I'm sure like the top PvPers know all of it because obviously they live it. But it feels like I need to go to Arena 101 just to figure it out.
What I really like, and what I think is like they're trying to recapture this a bit in 9.1. I've seen with like some of the damage readjustments, is just how good it feels to actually land a cast in TBC compared to like retail. Like when you're playing, like especially like I played a lot of Fire Mage when Shadowlands launched, and I got to like I don't know, I got to like 2.2k, nothing impressive. So I got PvP for like 4 weeks. But the thing that really turned me off was that so much of what you were doing, was instant cast based. It was like things you were doing while moving.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you're like, like in downtime, you'd cast a lot of fireballs for sure. But when you were like really, really in the thick of things, when it was like, here's a burst window. It's not like, oh, I got this big fireball cast off, I'm a god, right? Like no, like you're not getting off casts that feel really really good in the same way that it does when you're playing a proper Frostmage.
Yeah, I think it sort of speaks to the simplicity of Arena and TBC, but almost simplicity being a misnomer because there is a lot of complexity, especially as you reach the higher skill caps of even just basic PvP. And this is speaking from a mage perspective, but from a viewer, you're able to pick up everything almost instantly, even if you're not incredibly big on PvP, even if you're not incredibly big even on playing in vanilla, but you have some basic concepts of it. When you put that same viewer in a retail situation, and the barrier to entry to even understanding what's going on is insane. And so I think for a lot of people that enjoy Classic right now, it hits. I think PvP, as far as arenas go, are going to be incredibly popular.
I think you're really hitting the nail on the head there, right? It's not like every class hasn't been homogenized to the point where it's like confusing what abilities they have, because so many classes have so many like similar but slightly different abilities in retail currently. Like everyone has to have X amount of goes and X amount of defensives, and X amount of CC prevention and X amount of interrupts, right? Whereas, right, like when a mage interrupts, right, like it's very different from when a rogue interrupts, right? Like that's very noticeable, right? Like if a warrior's connecting, you don't need to know like the 1,000 abilities that a warrior's going to do. Like when they actually connect, warrior connect, that bad, right? Like mage get off frostbolt, that good, right? Like it's simple to watch, and it's really really enjoyable to play as a result. I think
monks are a great point to there. I don't mean to we are getting quite off topic, but with a monk, you just do the leg sweep, and then there's like a whirlwind leg thing going on, and you're just like, okay, well, is he dashing? Is he attacking? Is he fighting? Is he running? Like I don't know what's going on.
And then if he's not doing that, he's fucking healing, right? So I mean, like,
Yep.
Anyway, okay, so I think that's I think we covered as much of tier 4 as we can. I would love to talk about tier 5 at a later date with you guys. I'm trying to get through this with every single class and just talk about tier 4 first, and then we'll maybe come back and talk about tier 5, seeing how if this is popular, if people like this stuff. But I want to thank you. If you guys want to shout out yourselves, Ayle's, I don't know if you're there, Ayle, but I can do it for you.
You got me?
Oh, he's there. He's live. Yeah. Ayle is
I
Ayle
don't know what
Gaming
happened.
on Twitch. How's it going, man? Do you want to tell us what you're doing, what you're up to, so people can find you?
Mainly been doing a ton of arena in the beta, just kind of doing multi-class, anything I can, playing with whoever I can. The badge server has just been like so addicting to just nonstop queue arena and really high competition. It's been a lot of fun. So that's mainly what I've been doing on mine. Been playing, warrior mage. Been playing disc priest, which I don't have one even, but that's been a ton of fun as well. Just jamming.
Hell yeah.
Just jamming games.
Jamming. Yeah, I like it. North, do you have anything you're doing right now that you want to promote, or are you just chilling and playing Burning Crusade because you love World of Warcraft and love MMOs?
I will start streaming again in TBC. I will. I'm running a raid with people know who T Mugsy is. T Mugsy and I are running a raid together. We will be streaming comms. It will be a nightmare, and it will be a lot of fun. So I mean, I'm North the Mage on literally every social. On Twitch, on Twitter, on YouTube. But yeah, I mean, you can go follow my Twitter if you want. Just my takes on MMOs, or you could, if you really wanted to do something nice for me, you could at Ashes of Creations tell Stephen Sheriff to respond to my application to them and hire me. Obviously, that would be nice. But yeah,
I'm on it, man. North, I actually love your Twitter. I love looking at every time you tweet. I'm like looking at it, thinking about it. Gives me thought, gives me pause. I'm like, that's a good point. And like the Karazhan stuff. You said I think it was a couple weeks ago. After the first test, you were like, "Hey, Karazhan's too easy," and I was like, "But Karazhan's supposed to be easy." And then they, like a couple days later, Blizzard was like, "Oh yeah, we screwed something up. It's way too easy."
Yeah, I mean, and even if that weren't the case, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just like so much of, I don't know. I just want a new MMO, and like I love WoW. Like don't get me wrong. Like I grew up on WoW. It was really interesting, but I just
WoW 2, man. I don't know. WoW 2, where is it? Come on, Blizzard.
We need a fresh. We need a fresh, and I don't think it can come from Blizzard. I think it's got to come from indie studio. I think it's got to come from people who are hungry, right? Because the people who are hungry are going to do risky things, right? They're going to do risky things, and those daring things are going to be what I think drives the industry forward. Because we've already done the safe thing. WoW was the safe MMO. It's been the safe MMO for 15 years. and we're reliving old versions of it because it's that safe and that long lasting, that has so much wide appeal because it's just generally good, but it's not daring, it's not new, it's not exciting.
Yeah,
And I would love for us to have something to say that was.
love it. Esquire, you've been popping off over there on Twitch. You've been this guy's going. Where can people find you if they don't already know?
Yeah. So you can find me on twitch.tv/TheRealEsquire. For TBC, at least my plans are to continue gold farming. It's kind of one of my big things. Raiding will be streamed as well, and then kind of a different perspective from these two guys. I'm sure I don't match up in any ways in their PvP skills, but I'll be focused on kind of a learning route. Maybe an understatement there, but yeah, basically going through the ropes and learning every different stage and how to take it to the next level type thing, like a high school to college to professional level.
How far can gold get you in arena?
Well, no, okay, none of that. North, did you tell him how much I sent you, dude?
I think people are gonna have loads of fun, especially in 5s. I think 2s and 3s are really are really theory crafted and meta fairly far, into their respective lifespans. But no private servers really had a really good solidified 5 scene. So I expect to see even rookies running in and just doing cool things in 5. So I think everyone should be excited for that, including you. That's quite
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it. I think we'll wrap it up there, and that about does it.